Welcome to the Bridge of Truth. I'm here at the Meta Center filming a very, very special event. Returning guest, Anthony Citro. Anthony was with me on my very first show with Stephanie Azaria, and I'm really pleased that he's able to come here again today. Thank you so much. Our first show was about 2012 and the cosmological significance of that. We were really timely when we discussed it. So much has happened in the world since then and in your life, and I'd hope you could maybe start off by telling us a little bit about that.
Well, for all of us, any being of light, any light worker, as we like to call ourselves, light carrier, light being, whatever you want to say, it's been a period of tremendous transformation, inner transformation. We just came from a triple eclipse period where there was a partial lunar eclipse, a full solar eclipse, and a partial lunar eclipse, all within the space of a month, I believe. And I have just returned from a powerful week of healing and transformation with my teacher, Derek O'Neill. Every year he gives the June trips in Ireland, and we do amazing light work for the world and also for ourselves. And it's been just leading up from a huge period of, there was that summer, the soul, what was it? Stephanie would speak to it better than I would. Solar Grand Cross and all kinds of stuff going on astrologically. And basically Spirit is putting the pressure on, or Source rather is putting the pressure on for us to get it, to move forward, to break the old paradigms, the old patterns, to bring in the golden age, finally actualize it, really do it, really have it happen, instead of being this, spiritual terminological mythos out there, to actually experience it. And so, there's that rough transition. There's also a lot of things going on with the sixth ray, divine ray of creation receding, and the seventh ray coming and ushering the golden age, and there's always a period of chaos when one divine ray's energy that's focused on the planet or here sort of recedes and the other one comes in, and all the attachments and all the energies inherent from that previous ray sort of have a hard time letting go to allow in the new. But it's all part of the divine plan, as we all know. Everything's perfect. And so it's just been a really intense period, for myself, my own personal growth, coming to terms with really looking finally at the dark night of my soul, if you will, and not sort of hedging that, really looking at it. And, it's like death, it's the 5 stages of death: denial, anger, and so forth, dealing with all of that and releasing those last vestiges of inner resistance, inner, I don't want to say darkness, but inner struggle of the ego to allow in the fullness of the mission that you're doing. In my case, helping people access the energies of creation, the ascension energies, which seems to be what Source has been pushing me to do for a long time. And with the workshops and the modalities coming in and the healings. And of course, the rising star is a big part of my life as a member of SQ, and of course, the Prema birthing. So I've just been really basically on a roller coaster, not so much emotional roller coaster as a spiritual roller coaster. And, a big part of the trip with Derek this year, and he must have said it a million times, was consciousness. We're finally coming into that state where we are able to move past a lot of our stuff, and also the stuff we hold for others, by the way, in the world, and to embrace a larger consciousness and hold that space. And so the consciousness is what is needed to bring forward the new, bring forward the golden age. It's really all about consciousness and the expansion of consciousness. And so that's what I've been focusing on. And I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, it's a good place to start, and you actually, in the course of what you just said, brought up several things, and I want to cover them separately. You mentioned about the race, but I'd like to hold off a little bit on that.
It's a big topic.
The last thing you just said is consciousness, and you know, every day we kind of like look at the TV, and how can you even think that humanity is elevating its consciousness when you see so much around you that's like, you know, where is the elevation in this, and how can that incredible leap occur that's supposed to basically take place by the end of 2012?
Well, oh boy, how much time do we have? That's a big topic. And interesting, the rays play into that, but as they do with everything, we come from that. But let me step back a moment and try to assess the bigger picture. The spiritual path is the spiritual path. It's not an easy one. You know, as Derek O'Neill, my teacher, says, it takes courage to live this way. It does, you know, because you know, me being Italian from Patterson, I'm sure you can relate. You know, I said we get whacked a lot. You know, you get whacked. You know, but it's not Tony Soprano. It's
if you're from Patterson, you're Paisan, because I grew up in Patterson.
Oh, you did? I didn't know that. Oh my God, I really didn't know that. Yeah, I'm from Patterson too. So I always come as a little Italian boy from Patterson, New Jersey. How did I end up doing this? But you know, it's really about Al. Stepping into the fullness of who you are, and not, you know, there's a saying that Merlin has, you know, the great descendant Master Merlin that we all know and love. Stand on your own mountain. You know, don't look at anybody else's vista. Stand on your own mountain. See the end from the beginning. Be in the moment. And I think what we have to do is we have to realize that we're in a space of transition. And I see this a lot in my work. I see this in myself, especially with the bodily symptoms of the ascension process, which are a lot of times difficult for people. Right away they want to medicate themselves, they want to medicate children with Ritalin, they want to do all these kind of things out of fear because things are happening to them, they don't know what's going on. But really we are ascension, and we're talking about ascension really, is descension, meaning there's spiritualization of matter into form. So never before have we had such an exciting consciousness, ability to experience all of the energies directly, the ability to apply the teachings directly and consciously. And I believe it was Carolyn Meese who said, in the chaos is where you find God, or something to that effect, meaning that you have to be centered no matter what's going on around you. That's what equanimity is, that's what detachment is. So whether you win $1 million, as Baba Sai Baba used to say, whether you win $1 million or you die tomorrow, it's all the same thing. Now, of course, that's an ideal. So yes, somebody like myself, for instance, who loves children, it's hard for me to see children suffer. But they have their karma. It's hard to see animals suffer. They also have their karma. So the best thing you can do is to always go back to choosing love and not fear. And we're always bombarded continually, especially those who are on the path and are sensitive and are compassionate and are open, that you still have to move forward even though animals are being abused. You still have to move forward even though children are dying of cancer. You still have to move forward even though there's unrest in the world, because you either add to the light and add to the consciousness and help reform or help rejuvenate the mass consciousness, which is creating a lot of this stuff, to focus on bringing in light and bringing in the new and allowing the old to die of itself, which is the ego anyway, in all things. Or you engage and you keep feeding the fear. You keep feeding into, oh, these poor animals, these poor children, they're dying, they're suffering. Yes, of course, you're compassionate and you extend compassion without pity and you do what you can to help. But it's better to hold a space for all the children of the world to be bathed in light than it is to worry all day, sitting about, oh my God, I got to do this, I got to do that. You know what I'm saying? To help, you do what you can. And so there really is a chaotic shift going on. And the reason that is in place is because we really need to be shaken up so we can really now allow the new in. Because we'd be like the ever-ready bunny. We just keep going, eating, sleeping, screwing, drinking, till something slaps us beside the head. Or as I like to say, like Cher and Moonstruck, snap out of it, until we snap out of it. And we have to understand, because I do a lot of work with the violet flame and, of course, transmuting karma, and to help put that intention into the world, a lot of the masses and the mass consciousness is still in a space of lower vibration, by and large, on some level, until they come to an awareness or until they start on the path. When you say you're on the path, it means you automatically want to raise and sustain a raised vibration, and therefore in lies the test and the challenges that come along with that. They're inherent in that. And the reason a lot of people don't want to go onto the path is because they know they have to go through stuff they don't, like the fear factor, the obstacle courses and all that. And only people who have been sort of whacked upside the head and have been brought into consciousness usually are those who do it more easily. But everybody eventually has to wake up. So when we say as light workers that we're the first wave or we're the way showers, what that means is our example and our holding the consciousness as much as we can of love and light more regularly. And that's why we go to the initiations and the workshops and see all these great gurus and teachers that are constantly showing up, like Amma and dear Baba when he was alive and is still present anyway. Dalai Lama, John of God, all these people, Mother Mira, who's coming next week, and when we see them, and of course when I spend time with my teacher Derek, it's very amazing, and they're here to help us maintain a vibration of love no matter what. So that's the first thing on the path you sort of come to grips with. You have to maintain as much as you can that vibration of love and choosing love regardless of what you're going through or what's going on in the world. Because otherwise you just feed into the fear and keep it generating. And your consciousness dims to what you can create now going forward, from this moment forward. And so we are the first wave. We are, light workers of today. We've contracted to be here and live and grow in this time and make an effort to help during this time as part of our karmic contract. So whether we be like Moses, where we get to the promised land and never see it in this lifetime, or where we actually start to see some effect, some real change, is irrelevant. We still have to hold the consciousness of love to move forward for our own karma, the karma of the world. And the more you grow as a light worker, the more consciousness you hold, the more light you hold, the more you actually affect a larger picture. So in other words, when I do a workshop in the Violet Flame and 20 or 30 of us send the Violet Flame to Japan, for instance, there's a beautiful healing. We feel that we've accomplished something. We've helped on some level to intention that there. But imagine if 1 million people were doing that. The effect with intentioning that the Violet Flame go and help the situation in Japan, it might have affected a different outcome. A lot of the reason these light workers, these high-powered teachers are coming around is to actually prevent further or deeper catastrophes. And so one of the things we have to deal with is the Earth is ascending with us as well. We've ascended before as a race, but we've left our body. This time we're allowed to ascend while we're living in our body. So that's why my teacher says it's the most exciting time to be alive in humanity's history, because we get to actually experience ascension in real time while we're living, because we are the ascension. We are anchoring humanity. We are anchoring. It's not something remote or outside of ourselves. It's happening through us, from us, with us. And so we are allowed to live if we want to raise our vibration and sustain a fourth and a fifth dimensional vibration of unconditional love, which is where we're having to struggle now, because a lot of us do not live in unconditional love every day. I mean, even though I'm a spiritual teacher and a healer by trade, facilitator of workshops and such, I can't honestly say that I live in unconditional love 24/7. Especially when I get in the subway and I want to kill half the people on there because they're pushing me out of the way, and just living in the city, it's hard to maintain that. But I do my best. And I think the trick is for people to recognize, in terms of raising consciousness, do your best simply with intention. Intention the highest, and then let your lower vibration find its own raising. In other words, people work so hard, I can't have sex anymore, I can't do this anymore, I got to be this. And cutting off is just the old paradigm. The new paradigm is everything shifting and changing. So you have to allow yourself the grace to experience that, to come into that without pressure in yourself, because then again, you're just adding to the drama and the pressure. So, being spiritual can't anymore be associated with being celibate or being, a monk with a shaved head on a mountain praying by yourself. Those things are fine if you want to do them, and that's your path, and that's your contribution to hold that space. But you have to naturally be ready for that. And the thing is, ascension is happening in the moment in groups. The seventh ray is about group consciousness. That's what we're coming into. We're ascending in groups. So that's why these workshops are more and more prevalent. That's why these experiences are happening, because there's your own individual ascension, but it's also mirrored and buffered by the group collective ascension. So, we're all on this path to really being clear that the war is afoot, the game is afoot. It's like Arjuna in the chariot with Krishna, in the Bhagavad Gita. You have to slay your demons, you have to go into battle, you have to be in alignment with Source while you do it, and you have to sort of surrender to that experience. As long as you are holding as much as you can the consciousness of light and love, even if you're intentioning that, is enough. Because everything now is about intention, about motivation. And the more you do that, the more you strengthen yourself, the more you contribute to light rather than feeding into the fear, the more you can live a better life yourself, create a better life for yourself and your loved ones, and also your clientele and your groups, and add to the effulgence of light that needs to be anchored on the planet so everybody can benefit. That's the great thing about the Mahatma, is if 1/4 of the world anchored the Mahatma, the whole world would benefit by the nature of what it is. So, my mission partly has been to really help people understand that you can access the energies of ascension and creation very easily. Even many light workers don't use the violet flame or the Mahatma or the conscious connection with the divine rays, and these are the energies that are there for us to use. If we're not going to use them and connect in a conscious way to enhance our process, how can we expect, somebody on the street who has no awareness just going about their life? As my teacher said in Ireland in June, he said, energies plus teachings equal happiness. Meaning that when you apply that, you can't just dryly apply a spiritual teaching and not back it up with real experience. You can't just take an energy like a junkie and not apply it to your life. So it's about using the spiritual teachings that resonate with you, connecting with the energies simply and easily, and then with intention, creating your new paradigm, doing your mission. Maybe your mission is to just be a wife and mother to a great child that grows up to be a great teacher. Who knows? It's just as valuable than somebody who's out there making, a ton of money or whatever, being this light worker with books and all that. It really doesn't matter. My teachers often said the holiest person in the room is the janitor. So we know that we're all one, we're all important, we're all valuable, all pebbles on the beach. But it really is about the more you can hold consciousness in spite of all this drama that's unfolding around you, the more you can actually affect change than if you didn't do that. And this is the road to mastery. This is the first step on the spiritual path, because the world, you could spend 24 hours a day worrying and fretting that the world's going to end, these people are doing this, Afghanistan, and Israel, blah, all over. You can do that 24 hours. What is it going to accomplish?
And the worry feeds that energy.
And the worry feeds it. Or you can take the other thing that spiritual people don't get too, what I call woo-woo, too into the spiritual terminology, too into the ETs are coming, and the ETs, the extraterrestrials are here, but it's not about, some kind of woo-woo sort of experiment, They're Christed extraterrestrial beings that are involved in our process to support us and help us evolve, but it doesn't mean we have to not be human and present and in alignment with Source and do what we're supposed to do, So there's a lot going on, and it really has been a restructuring for people, the light workers first, to heal, because you heal the planet by healing yourself. So, I belong to a great organization, SQ Wellness, which Derek has founded. It's a worldwide mission to help people discover the truth of who they are, because if you don't do that, and if you don't get real with that, you really can't affect change, because you are creating from your own source. You're creating from your connection with Source. So source is to get us to ascend, which is to allow the ascension to occur within us. We really need to, even if you don't go to workshops, even if you don't read spiritual books, just within your own space of yourself, allow to hold as much as you can light, regardless of what's going on around you. And that's the key. Even if you just put your hands on your heart and say, I am presence, please be present, and hold that for a few minutes every day with sincere intention, that alone can do so much more than intense effort to change something or someone that is not ready to change. You know, Derek talked about with animals, a lot of us love animals and we have attachments to animals. And, you know, he said, don't put an animal down, let it live out its karma, because you're taking away its karma. So you're putting an animal down because, of course, you don't want it to suffer, the animal to suffer, and you have attachment to it. But that the very suffering and going through and that may be the completion of that karma, so that soul can advance to the next level. You know, of course, we don't do that usually with our parents unless they're at a stage where they want to go. You know, and there's a whole drama about that. But you know, basically, you have to let karma unfold. You know, part of the expansion of consciousness and the problem for a lot of people is they still are locked into this one lifetime being it. You know, it's like a drip in the bucket. So that's hard to grasp a lot of times because we know we live, we die, and we're experiencing our life. But the more we come into understanding we're multidimensional and we are, you know, all one and all these things that we hear about in the spiritual world, the more we experience that in our body directly, the less fear we have of death, because that transition will come anyway at some point. But imagine if you've built up enough steam where you can transition at 300 instead of 70, you know, or like the Telosians underground, you know, live for, you know, a long, long time. And keep producing the life hormone instead of the death hormone, which is part of what the Mahatma energy stimulates within you. Because we're taught, you know, we believe we have to die, we believe we have to get sick, and it's not true. But we believe it, so we make it true. So there's a lot going on. You see, just up front, you know, it opens up a whole Pandora's box just to ask a simple question.
Right. Well, actually, I want to take a short break. Several things we're going to discuss that you just brought up. First of all, about the idea of parental karma. I know you've done workshops on that. In the coming segment, we'll discuss a little bit about that. The other thing that I'd like to talk about is, because you're talking about so many things that to the uninitiated, and I don't mean initiated in the initiations, but into unknowledgeable sense, things like rays and the other terms that you use, it may seem like even in talking about light workers, people may get the sense that it's an us versus them. And so I want to address that, to talk about, really, we are all essentially on this journey, whether we like it or not, or know it or not. It just happens to be a truth of our balance of physical and spiritual nature.
Sure.
So in the next segment coming up, let's talk about it. I'll give you a chance to think about that, and we'll be right back. Is there something you're passionate about? Something that you know can make a difference? Do you want to meet others who feel the same way? Then enter The Bridges, the online community for you. It's easy to join, and the standard membership is free. You can create your own blog, post photos, videos, music, form groups, create special events, and chat live with members from all over the world. And all the while, you'll know you'll be actively involved in helping to create a better world. So join today and tell your friends. The time for action is now. Enter The Bridge. Welcome back. Leading out of the last segment, I brought up the subject of ancestral karma. Mm-hmm. I know that you've been doing workshops here. I've had the opportunity to film a few of them. Please talk a little bit about that.
Well, you know, segueing from what we were talked about before, which is, you know, this hugeness of the experience and trying to grasp it. A lot of what we're working through is if you want to call it ancestral karma. And two of the workshops that I've always done fact, one of the first ones I ever did was honoring the Divine Mother within, and then healing the father issues. And these are the two that I repeat over and over again.
I guess in terms of thinking of ancestors, it really begins with the parents.
Well, if you're, there's been times in a workshop in, California, there's 300 people, Derek has said, look around to your left and look around to your right. You've all been everybody's mother in one lifetime, and everybody's like, okay, So the point is, there's the mother-father issue, if you will, for want of a better word, is really the most primordial, the most visceral that we all go through usually. Now, there are lifetimes when you've had a good parental situation, you have a grace to, not have to deal with that as much. But as I always say to people, if you want to study spirituality and you have to believe in karma, if you do, study history. Because if you feel you've been around a long time, most of our lifetimes have been short-lived, warrior, abandon, neglect, abuse, kill and be killed, on so forth and so on, for the most part, if you're an old soul, let's say, or even a medium old soul. So we have all this we're working through. Now we've come to the point of the Ascension, which we call 2012, which is really a misnomer because the Ascension's already unfolding. That's just a date that mass consciousness is focused on, but the Ascension is actually already unfolding anyway. And, so we are really ascending. The Earth is ascending with us. We really are actually shifting into what we call a fourth dimensional reality, and then, which we are now in a fifth dimensional reality, which means, in layman's terms, just a more expansive awareness of who we are as opposed to a limited 3D. You grow up, you get married, you die, that's it. So it's more of an expansive of consciousness of the potential of who you are and all that everything can be, really, if you want to simplify it. Because it can be grandiose and it can get confusing. So we're still working out those issues because they're the ones that are most relevant to us, And if you have serious mother-father issues, you find it's usually the case that Spirit is helping you through these hard situations or challenging situations, rather, to come closer back to Source, to go to that next level. If you sort of have an easier path with your parents, it usually means you're meant to just stay on this sort of level for the most part, maybe have other stuff to deal with. So I do the father-mother issue, particularly after Mother's Day and then after Father's Day. So, of course, we just did that right after the Ireland trip, came back, and it was Father's Day, because that's when these issues come up the most. Just like around Valentine's Day, the love issues come up the most. Because mass consciousness, again, is focused lifetime after lifetime on these topics, because that's where we come from. Our mother, our father, that was our, beginning, and where we evolved the most growing up. So if you've had abuse or neglect or abandonment by the father issue, you feel less empowered to go out in the world, and your consciousness is more dimmed because of it. If you've experienced lack of nurturance from the mother, you usually tend to take things in on yourself and be self-abnegating or self-critical and close down emotionally. So this is the game in the nutshell, So to constantly, and I've had people who've come for years, we regularly come to these workshops, I call them spiritual gyms for a reason. You come, you work out, and each one is different, each time is different, as we all grow and evolve as a humanity and as a group and individually, to deal with this issue. These issues never go away. The mother-father issue never fully goes away, but you can allow it, you cannot let it work you. You can learn to evolve past it and stand in your own power in spite of, or even in tandem with, all the issues going on within you, so that it relaxes and you come more into the fullness of who you are. And there, of course, comes in forgiveness, detachment, unconditional love, all these things. Until I forgave my parents, I really couldn't move forward, and I spent so many years of my life trying to please my mother, trying to help my mother, and never feeling the real love from my father, even though he's not a bad man. I just didn't have that connection. So that affected me going out in the world, but it also brought me experience that made me to be the facilitator and teacher I can be and help others work through those issues. As we all go through in life, things bring us to what we're supposed to do. So I do repeat these workshops over again because it really helps people connect with the Divine Father and the Divine Mother in a continually more holistic and expansive way, because the universal parent, the Divine Parent, will never disappoint us, only a human parent, because they're all too human. And so you go through this journey of forgiveness and redemption with the birth father, and through the guided meditation and visualization, and you go through the same thing with the mother, and you take that journey, and through the experience, through the music, and then there's the talking sections, which you filmed, it helps people process the experience. And when we feel that connection with the Divine Father, you can sort of more feel forgiving of your own birth father.
Now, since I was fortunate enough to film these, what I'd like to do now is play some excerpts so that our audience gets a sense of exactly what you do.
Okay.
Check it out.
So it's really a deeper lesson for you about your own empowerment. And it could speak to a mother issue of what you maybe or may not have received internally from your mother, and how you've operated all this while and dealt with women in positions of power. And now as you are coming into your own, you're trying to realize how you have to shift that, which is fine, because that's your road to mastery. Just like I have mine and you have yours and she has hers. It's not a judgment, it's not a problem. It's just something you have to deal with, just like I have to deal with something, he has to deal with something. It really is all that. That's all it is. And it's really about allowing yourself to surrender more, and trust at a deep innate level that the Divine Mother will take care of you. Maybe your own mother couldn't or didn't, but the Divine Mother will take care of you. And it's getting us to really get that and believe that, and then let go. Derek said something to me in LA that was pretty amazing, and yet there's a part of me that's still doubting it. Because there's a part of me that can't believe that that's possible. And so I'm working through that. We all have something that our stuff will come up, and then we'll just deal with it, and then we have to just stay the course and say surrender. Really, it's coming to that. You have to surrender any issue with the mother and father around that you have that's serious, and take it from them. Because they're the only ones that are going to do it ultimately. Through you. And you have to shift. We have to shift. We have to change. That's all it is.
I'm just so confused. I'm very confused.
Well, it's not
with
something that
everything.
can be discussed, one thing. But what I would say to you is, you have no option but what we're going to do right now is to surrender to Divine Mother. Why? What is the resistance after coming to all these workshops and all these things to sitting for 10 minutes in it when it's something that's Divine Mother, please tell me, what do I do? And listen here. What's the resistance to that? Because we're not used to believing that we can have that from our own mother, per se, maybe. And, so it's getting back to that space, because this is your mastery. You are a mother, you're a wife, your family is important. And so as you're mastering, and this is a big healing around your own situation. So it's all coming to roost to get you, Divine Mother, please be with me. Let me know. Tell me how to deal with this situation. What's wrong with that? And then when you hear the answer, then act from that sacred space of connecting with divinity, your divinity, which is you anyway. And that will shift a different response than, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I don't know, you see, and that's okay, that's how we used to operate. So that's why we come. So it's not something that can be solved overnight or in one workshop. But you have to take the tool of the experience here and then use it on your own. That's the lesson, is to heal yourself. And so if you give too much, you're going to get experience of something. If you give too little, you're going to feel something. So obviously this came to you. So dear Mother, how do I handle this? Help me to handle this situation. Help me to be the best person I can, whatever you want to say, with your heart sincerely, and wait for the answer. And then act upon that as if you were and are with the Divine Mother, and walking with that energy, and believing that that's possible and okay, just because. That's the higher application of connecting with energy. Otherwise, we're just humans praying and hope one day it'll be answered, one day it won't. When we are young, we usually associate our birth father with God the Father, because it's this remote outside figure that has total authority and is taking care of us. Of course we have the mother, But we usually associate, so if there's a schism, if there's an abuse, we cut off from God as we cut off from our Father in terms of numbing or closing down. So if you have a father issue and you close down or you numb down or you hide or whatever you do, you also do that from God. And so a lot of times when we have a father-mother issue, especially a father issue, is to bring us back closer to God. Usually people that don't have as much of these issues, what do? They grow up, they marry someone like their mother or father, they have a basic happy life, ups and downs, and that's fine. And they just have a karmic grace in this lifetime with that, but they have other issues to deal with. Most people have a father-mother issue to work through at some level to bring them to another level of their own divinity. And so, if we recognize as spiritual beings, enlightened beings who are a spiritual path in some way, that consciousness creates our reality. Our thoughts create our reality. If we can see the Divine Father energy as ultimate consciousness coming into our being, into our mind, into our satsang, into our thoughts, into our feelings, we'll be able to create with the Divine Father energy, and in a short amount of time, have that connection that our birth father may or may not have given us over 18 or so years of our development. And so we no longer need to depend on. See, this is the problem with spiritual people on some level, is we can tend to be a little lazy sometimes because we want to be in the energy. We want to be in the flow. But there comes a time where we have to take responsibility for all that we're receiving. In other words, all this energy we're taking in, all this awareness we're developing, all these workshops, initiations, things, books we read. At some point you have to apply it. Otherwise it's just like an arrow bed. You keep taking the energy and blowing it up, and the excess just keeps blowing up. At some point we have to make a move. And the Father energy is about making a move. It's consciousness in action. So, if you're taking years to start your business, if you're not being empowered in relationships, if you're still feeling you're not good enough to be as one with a high level of beings in a group, it's because you're still relying and attached to receiving from an outside source, daddy patting you and saying, okay, you're good, or go ride the bike, you did good, or, take me for an ice cream cone, or whatever it is. And we are human. I'm not saying to you that you don't have, these are deep energies that are working within us, so of course, it's important. But at some point, we have to say, okay, Divine Father, you take me.
That was wonderful. Now, I want our viewers to know that these workshops combine the speaking with an actual meditation, a guided meditation in Anthony.
Yeah, I think you're showing just the talking parts,
just the talking
film
parts.
The meditation part.
Exactly.
Anyway.
It's a little bit too personal, and plus it would, out of context, it really doesn't work the same. But I think it would be nice if you perhaps were able to offer a little guidance to our viewers that maybe they're not thinking in terms of the big picture of the spiritual progression of lives, and they just want to deal with the issues that they have to deal with every day, and how these workshops can benefit them.
Well, like I say, I like to think of these events as spiritual gyms. And I don't mean in any way to demean it, actually. I mean it.
No, it's a great expression.
Yeah, in other words, you come and you work out, you expand, you grow, you connect with the beings of light, you connect with the energies powerfully in group session, and whatever you experience in your own individual self. And then it strengthens you to go out and do that on your own, live on your own. Al, I know, we always, want to say to people, okay, what can the average person do? But there's going to come a point where, part of my mission has been to get in people's head, even the janitor, the waitress, the taxi driver, they could be sitting in their car and just taking a few moments and asking the violet flame to help them transmute their karma. See, the problem is yes, as I said in the beginning of this interview, and I guess we're trying to tie everything together, and the concept is so huge, all of these experiences, because everything's growing and expanding. Holding that consciousness of love. So for instance, if you want to know how you can help your parents in their situation, when you go to visit your mother in the hospital and you see her sick, don't see her as sick. See her as beautiful and whole, surrounded with light. Hold that consciousness of her perfection.
The real challenge, I think, and I know that I'm dealing with this, and I imagine you are too, when you're in a moment of confrontation, is to take a proactive approach to stop that feeling, that energy.
Yes, my mother can really push my buttons.
And to immediately find a way to choose love and invoke love, to bring love into that moment, even though it's...
Well, it's a process, especially if you're close with your parents. Like, I'm going to be 49 in the end of this month, July 25th. What am I talking about? I'll be 49. Mm-hmm. And it took me till I was 47 not to have a visit with my mother where it didn't end in an argument. Mm-hmm. Like the Real Housewives of New Jersey. Sure. And part of that is because my own growth, my own intense journey, and my own intense, my time with my teacher has been so valuable. Putting my energy into my own development and using the energies strongly in alignment with following the teachings, mm-hmm. got me to the point where when she pushed my buttons at that point, I was like Jackie Gleason, pins and needle and pins, and I'll give you 3 minutes, mother-in-law. And I didn't let her get to me, and I was strong enough, but it took me 47 years before I could say, I'm not going to let her get to me. And there was a point where she looked at me like, you're not going to argue with me? Because she was expecting that argument. And I disarmed her. It took all my strength. I wanted to strangle her, but I didn't. I didn't go there. And I think if you're not going to be on a path where you're doing the energies and you're applying the teachings, all you can do is work to hold a consciousness of love and light as much as you can, and send love and light, and just try to be positive and hold that intention, because otherwise you have to do some work. What is it to take an average, so-called average person to sit every day, put their hands over their heart and say, I am presence, please be present. And just hold that space. How hard is that? And over time, doing that as opposed to not doing that will actually shift you, because you're working as you're working in a gym, building up. Eventually you get the bicep. It doesn't happen the first week, but eventually that happens. So I think people are not used to opening those synapses in the brain. And part of myself, a person like myself's mission, who is just a real... sometimes I used to call myself a little tiny schmuck from Paterson, New Jersey. What the heck did I know? If you told me, 20 years ago I'd be doing this work, I would have said, bada boom, bada bing, get out of my face. And here I am, fully invested and involved in helping people access the energies of creation very simply and easily, but they have to be activated with intention. You have to show up. You have to take that first step. Derek says when you take one step towards God, he takes 1,000 towards you. So sometimes you do have to do homework. Sometimes you do have to work out a little. And it only takes a few minutes. And that's what my work, if you're talking about, has been. So if you're coming every year to the Father workshop, over time, it's going to strengthen you to see your Father in a different light and be able to forgive, hold the consciousness of light around that issue, and able to see the Divine Father, your connection with the Divine Father, letting Divine Father energy hold you. Mm-hmm. And when you feel that viscerally in your gut, you can let go of the attachment. Because really the suffering is the attachment. That's what first thing you learn as a spiritual person, that it's your attachments that create the suffering. It's not the problem itself, because it's all an illusion anyway. And of course we have the most attachments to our parents. So in terms of what a real person can do, if they can benefit from the workshop, just showing up, whether my workshops or, of course, the More Truth Will Set You Free, which are fantastic, and there's other beings of light that hold high vibration integrity around town or around the world where you can tune in and connect. But the whole point is, it's just like whatever I do or whatever you go to, the person goes to, should strengthen you to be able to do it on your own. It shouldn't be like I hold you in thrall, like you have to come to my workshop to get ahead. You have to pay thousands of dollars. All that's bullshit. There's too much of that in the spiritual world, unfortunately. And that's why I keep everything as minimal as possible, accessible as possible, try to make it easy as possible, and still people have resistance because they're just not used to operating with those synapses. An average person who's been a housewife and maybe a secretarial life, she comes to a workshop, she feels the energies are great, a friend told her about her, wow, that was fantastic, but she doesn't discipline herself to call in the violet flame every night before she goes to bed. If everybody called in the violet flame for a few minutes, and please, violet flame, work with me overnight while I'm sleeping to transmute any karma I may have around, money issues or attracting the right love for me or whatever, and you just hold that for a few minutes, and then you drift off to sleep, that sets in motion through intention the energy, because they're literally the hierarchy, the spiritual hierarchy field is spoon feeding us at this time. It doesn't seem that way, but they've never before given us this much access to them, to the energies, to the teachings consciously. But they still, because we are integral to the ascension process, meaning our transformation actually anchors it. On some level, we have to have the intention to activate it. So you don't have to go and spend thousands of dollars and get all kinds of activations. What you have to do is, through your own intention, ask the energies to be with you, just like you used to pray to Mother Mary, or Jesus, Mahatma, Mahatma, Mahatma. Please help me accelerate my ascension process. And feel and see, if you can, the energy come into you however you can. And just hold that for a few minutes and hand over your heart. It can't be any easier. But if people don't make it a priority on some level, once they reach a certain level of consciousness, they're not being responsible, because people who don't know can't do that. But people who are aware and are coming to spirituality, if you will, at some point they are aware of the energies and the teachings, and they have to apply them. It's really that simple, because it's in the application that the transformation actually occurs. So you can have all the knowledge in the world, you can, sit in a workshop all you want. If you don't, with your own intention, apply it. Part of the reason a lot of people have, commented rather nicely that my workshops are so powerful. First of all, they're not my workshops. I'm not the doer. They're sources workshops that are channeled through. All I do is hold the space, or any facilitator does, is hold the space of love and light for who's ever there in a large way, as opposed to for your own self. And you just hold the space, and the beings, the energies, need a physical anchor to hold on. And then a lot of the reason the workshops have been so amazing is because I have a devoted core who come continually twice a month for years. So they're growing and able to anchor so much more and more and more, so the other people that are coming get the benefit of that. And that's why I tell them all the time, you're just as important, if not more important than myself, because you're contributing so much. That's why I feed people all the time, usually, because they're actually performing seva by anchoring the energies. So the more you show up, the more you're able to anchor, the more they can do through you and through the workshop or through whatever, and the more that can actually happen directly for the group. But then it also affects, just anchoring the energies in a group or by yourself alone is enough to affect change beyond yourself or the group. It's just the way it works. And the more that do it, and the more that do it more strongly, in the beginning when the Mahatma first came through, there's 81,000 people around the world trying to anchor it, and it got too much for them because it's so huge for the rest of humanity. So the more people took it on, the more people connect with it. That's why I do regular Mahatma workshops. The more it's just anchored in and of itself in a group setting, the more it helps the world just by the anchoring of it. And so even in your own personal life and your own personal mission, your own personal work, to me, the anchoring of energies is the new prayer. You see? You follow? Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, our Father, well, that's all great. But a real anchoring of energies with intention is what is the prayer now. It's what is sacred now. And you don't need to, burn sage for 20 years or beat drums and howl to the moon. Those are the old paradigms. People that still do that, that's great if they feel that helps them. But all these ritualistic things that people do, ritual is about attachment. They're attached to that way and the costume and the performance and all of it. Really, all you need is I am presence, please be presence. Very simple. And, you can play your favorite music. You could have your own private workshop at home. Put some incense, some oil on, put your favorite music, sit there and call the energies in and just hold them for as long as you can. You have your own little private workshop. And over time, you're strengthening yourself. It's just like those infomercials, PX90, or Shanti, Insanity, and all these things where they go crazy at home and they're doing all this workout, and then 90 days later they got this ripped body. Well, the same thing applies for spiritual work. The difference between a spiritual gym and a physical gym is you never lose the spiritual work. If you let go your physical, your body will go back to not being in shape. But no matter what, you never lose spiritual work. So you're just building your light quotient, and you have to do it. And if you still want to pray with the intention to just hold light and love for the world and for yourself. And that is still calling in the energies. But now we have access to calling in the Mahatma directly, allowing and asking the violet flame to still transmute our karma, connecting with the divine rays of creation to assist us in creating our reality. Because what people have to realize, we used to co-create, used to hear in the spiritual world that we're co-creating. Well, now we're creating our reality. In other words, we're becoming more into our God self, more into our own source, more into unconditional love, and we're realizing that we are God. Sai Baba said, the only difference between you and I is I recognize I'm God and you don't. So that alone freaks people out, and it's a whole big thing. It doesn't mean ego like I'm God. It means we're all one. We are of God, God is of us, God is within. And so whether you believe in karma, whether you're religious or not, if you don't connect with intention, and if you're looking outside yourself for something, it's never going to happen. Until we all come together, it takes a village to raise a child. Until we all come together to as one, we're never going to make it. We're not going to make it, in one sense. And so a lot of systems are breaking down. The religions, the money system, the governmental systems, all these things are breaking down, and all the corruption is coming to the surface because it can't. The dimension where the planet is going, I'm trying to speak in layman's terms, but as we're fourth dimensional, coming to fifth dimensional, these old paradigms can't sustain themselves. So if people insist on living in them, they're either going to have to leave the planet, or they're going to, suffer a shakedown at some level. At some level, things are going to shift in a big way. So, we can go on and go into all kinds of tangents. Of course, it's very easy to do so. But I think the gist of this interview is about how does the average person connect. And so I go back to what I said from the beginning, which is holding a space and consciousness of love and light for yourself, for others as much as possible. And it's not always easy to do, but if you still have to intention that, you still have to ask for that of yourself. You still have to apply the teaching of that, and you still have to connect with that energy for a few moments each day. So whether you want to say raise Mahatma or just consciousness of light and love, as my grandfather said, it all goes down the same stomach. They used to put all the plate on the food. I used to hate that when I was a kid. They put all the salad, the macaronis, everything, and I just don't like that. It all goes down the same stomach. And it does. It's all source. If it's light, it's light. When source in its pure essence is undifferentiated, we say, as the rays and the Mahatma and the violet flame and everything is formed in the physical universe, it differentiates. Because the biggest, highest spiritual teaching is God separated himself from himself to know himself more. This is the Big Bang. This is the mystery of life. We don't know. It's always evolving and folding. So you have to be in alignment with that as opposed to resisting that. And that's why change is the only constant. How's them apples? Change going forward is the only constant. So we have to, the only recourse we have is to go within and stay balanced as much as we can in light and love no matter what's going on around us. And if every soul on the planet did that at the same time, one light going off after the other, till there's nothing but an effulgence of light, the whole world would change. I think the teaching was if 2.5% of people raised their vibration, all these earthquakes would stop, all these volcanoes would relax, all this stuff would shift. Because we're still one with the earth. The earth has been responding to our mirror. Everything's a mirror. So, yes, there's the lessons of not judging and not comparing and being detached and all these spiritual sort of sound bites you hear. But somebody like me, who's a deeply spiritual person, that could be annoying, just as annoying as a layperson hearing all these terms, because what does that mean? Anybody can say that. It's really, sometimes you're going to be in judgment. I'm very real. I don't consider myself a saint or a guru or anything. I'm a human being who's attained a certain level of awareness of how amazing, and I'm so, for some reason, so connected to the energies and the masters, as we call them, beings of light. And to me, it's like butter. It's nothing. And my whole point is to help people realize that if you have that openness awareness, you too can have the same connection. You don't have to, be a spiritual person and do all these, and you don't have to be an adept. That's the whole point. So I think every light worker's mission who's of integrity should be at this point going forward to forget the old paradigm and allow people to just simply connect with light and light without a lot of fuss and muss, without a lot of ritual, without a lot of expensive levels upon levels of training. Just really just connect simply more and more until you realize that you are that light, and you hold that light in your heart as much as possible. And then if the rest of the time you're having a shitty day, so be it. If I get in a fight with somebody because, I'm not going to say to them, oh my God, I wasn't spiritual today, I didn't stay in love. Well, too bad. Like my teacher said, whoever said spiritual people are nice. Sometimes spiritual people can be the most enervating people because they're most aware of their issues and they're most embroiled in consciously trying to change. Somebody who's unconscious just goes about their business. They think everything's fine. Mafia people don't think they're doing anything wrong. It cracks me up, these shows where they're so mad if somebody does a little something to them, but they'll be happy to kill somebody and then go home and eat pasta like it's no big deal. No conception that their whole family is ruined that they killed. They don't care. They just care about the slight that happened to them. I mean, pick on mafia, but a lot of people are like that.
That occurs in the corporate world on a daily basis.
And it's interesting to bring up the corporation because we're really learning cooperation, not competition. And that's why men in general, not only, but men in general having the hardest shift, because everything you're taught as a man is to be competitive, and it's really not the paradigm. The new paradigm is cooperation. So we're all shifting with that too.
Well, listen, in closing, what I want our audience to know is that many of the topics that we've talked about today, we're going to be continuing a series of interviews or workshops or what have you, and posting them on our site. Go to enterthebridge.com. Anthony will have a page. The Bridge of Truth also has a page there. When possible, we'll post it on YouTube as well. I'll give Anthony the opportunity to address some of these topics specifically, go into them in depth, explain them a little bit more. If you don't know what the violet flame is or what Mahatma is or how that might relate to your particular belief or practice. Because the thing that I would like to say in closing is that what we were discussing really isn't something that exists out of context with what you already know or what you already believe or do.
We had talked about possible doing, I'd like to do maybe 3-minute meditations and free and post them on Facebook and YouTube for people who are interested just to connect simply with the energies and get a taste of it. Of course, come to your website and
and please get on Anthony's mailing list and the Bridge of Truth as well. And you'll have the opportunity to learn some of these things because ultimately all the religions, all the beliefs that are teaching something positive essentially they have their own versions of exactly what we're discussing today. It isn't that simply because you believe in one particular thing that you can't apply some of the practices that Anthony will be teaching.
Well, Sai Baba said, there is only one religion, the religion of love. There is only one caste, the caste of humanity. There is only one, and he was famous for saying that, and that is the truth.
Well, that's a wonderful way to close our show. And this is Al Leone, Anthony Citro, my special guest, and may all your journeys be truthful.
Thank you for having me.
Till the next time we meet on the Bridge of Truth.